With all due respect to the people that we have in our worlds, they don't always understand what's happening from your viewpoint or your why. Don't spend too much time trying to convince people of your why in order to get them on board with your dreams. Do what you know you're meant to do. Had my brother not been willing and able to do whatever it took for him to become an artist and to live his dream, we would not have the Jean Michel Basquiat legacy that we have today.
Hello, and welcome to Robert Young's Bright, Famed, Shining, the podcast. And today is a special day. It is a very special day for many, many reasons. And I'm really excited in this moment to share our guest. Our guest is one of many, many different skills, abilities, talents. All of the above, from my experience in the short time that I've known her, have tied to health, tied to wellness. And because this podcast is about where creativity meets wellness, it was a no-brainer to have her on. But the key is the creativity side is beautiful. She comes from a family, a legacy that most of us know, some of us don't. But for those who don't, you're going to find out today. That is magical. But her own work within that and beyond that is stuff we'd like to get into today so that we can really give people the opportunity to have tools. As you know, on this podcast, yes, we discuss interesting things. We talk about case studies and projects, people's favorite works. But you know that we are very, very diligent about the concept of wellness. And so in that, we're going to dance around these subjects carefully. And some of them have to do with identity. And it's going to be a good time, a fun time. And so as we move into the first stage, without further ado, I'll make an introduction and then I'll set the tone, as you guys know I always do. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're very happy to have on the show Miss Lisane Basquiat. How are you?
Yeah, I'm wonderful, Robert. Thank you so much. That was such a beautiful opening and entry into this base of this conversation.
Yeah, we're going to start really warm so everyone knows what I like to do. We're going to place our hands on our lap. And we're just going to take 4 deep breaths, just kind of center ourselves and kind of wiggle off whatever stress we might have brought to this session and let it all go so that we can be in a peaceful place of receiving. So here we go. We're going to deeply in through your nose and slowly through pursed lips out through your mouth. Take your time as we begin. Beautifully what the doctor ordered. So now I'm ready to have some fun. I'm released. I'm here. One of the exciting things about coming to LA for me is 30 years in the creative industries, large-scale public art activations, launch of the first ever poetry movement for Caribbean immigrant youth in Canada, edited Rihanna's first music video back in the days when I was editing music videos, worked in all high levels all over the world, lived in Medellin, Colombia, Barbados, Trinidad. But I'm here in LA and I came to LA to make my film. And I got to LA, and of course, as we know, not to time or put a timestamp on this podcast, but there's been a strike going on. Being that it's been on for a while, that'll help to release the timestamp part. But there's a challenge that happens because as a creative, we are constantly in a space of driving after, going after, living within our passion, within our goals, within our dreams that are not standard. They're not cookie cutter. They're not easily engaged through a college degree. And they take a great deal of perseverance to work through. And in this particular time, as you can imagine, there's great difficulty going on with people that are doing their passionate work, doing their purposeful work in the world, telling great stories, and now they're at the threat of not being able to work and to build a revenue stream. We will get into that later. I want to get into the meat of that. But this podcast is broken into 3 sections. The first section is how we know each other. There's a story to be told. So I would like to tell the story, if you don't mind, about how I first came to know you. And then if you don't mind sharing your reflection of me from your state, and then we'll keep going. So
Can I just add one little quick thing?
Yes.
So I really love, Robert, that you start your podcast with, or you're starting this conversation with the 4 breaths. I study Huna. And Huna is a spiritual and energetic practice out of Hawaii. And we start everything with 4 ha breaths, and we refer to them as ha because of the ha, with the exhale. So as soon as you mention that, I'm like, oh, okay, we're lockstep.
To that point, I usually do about 8 breaths, and I ask everyone, on your own time later, do these 8 breaths, right? But for the sake of the podcast, we give 4 to settle. And it's 2 things that it does. Firstly, it lets you know that you can settle yourself without having to sit down into a 20-minute meditation and be fumbling and fumbling. Your in and out breathing has all types of impact on your brain and the way the systems work and the release of the chemicals in the neurons that move through the brain that help us manage how we feel. Our feelings are not really feelings, or it's really just a chemical reaction going on in our brain. And we do have the means to use breath to change it. The reason why that really is mindfully amazing for me, and I'm glad that we are so much on the same page where that's concerned, I felt that when we met, is because there's human beings, we all need a means to quickly resolve critical matters that show up in our life. And that even if they're small or big, if they trigger us, they're on fire. And we need a means, we need a tool, a quick, real, science-based tool that allows us to reset ourselves. And so this is why with every podcast we start with the breath, because likely if you're showing up, there's 2 reasons. You're showing up because you're interested in the guest, you're interested in the topic, but mostly because you're interested in your well-being, and maybe you're under duress when you call. I say call by arriving because it is a call to action to be here. And so in that space, we need to let you let go of what you brought. What caused you to arrive is great, but now that you're here, we'd like to let you release that. So that's why it's so important. I'm glad and please don't ever hesitate to interrupt me at any time. Today is about you, and so I'm just simply navigating the ship, as it were. So back to our introduction. So I decided to do something different. I live in downtown Los Angeles, as you can see, and I podcast studios downtown as well. And I like to go for a run. So I've been listening recently to this podcast, Huberman Lab. The scientist is just an incredible scientist, one that I would suggest everyone check out. I don't know him, never met him, but I am moved by this podcast world and all the really cool things you get to see. If you look for wellness, if you look for inspiration, if you're looking for how to do something, it is in this world. So you're welcome to come and check it out. But in that scenario, I get up in the morning, I get sun in my eyes, and I often just do a little meditation. I write through my journals, and then I'll go to the gym and go on the step machine, even if it's only for 15 minutes, and I might do my more intense workout later in the day. That day, I decided I was going to go. It was a cardio day. And I took a rare expense. I'm going to go for a run. I'm not really a runner, but I said, I'll go for a run. And I went for a run. And I went up to a place that means a lot to me. So when I first arrived in LA, I went to see the Roots for New Year's Eve at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. And I remembered the Wicked Hill because I'd taken an Uber there, but I walked home in the rain. It's New Year's. And I was like, oh man, that hill would be good. Let me go to that hill. So I go up the hill, I get to the top, and all of a sudden, in the colors of the Jamaican flag, is this beautiful sign for this massive activation for what is not one of, but my singular only favorite artist in the world. And I thought that was quite outstanding to see that and the colors. And it really just took me aback. And I said, yes. So I happened to be wearing my Jamaican swim trunks that day as my jogging shorts. I had on the nice matching colors. I took a picture. I made a little video and I posted it on Instagram. And I said something like, yes, the king is here. You have to come see the king. At that time, I haven't even seen the show, right? But I know the king. It's the king's work, you know? So that being said, I posted it on Instagram. I'm not a big social media guy, but I did post it on Instagram and happened to see some connect, and I tagged the King Pleasure scenario, which led to a like and I think a possible repost from them on their story. And then I was introduced to Array, and that Array has events, and that there's an event that's happening where we'll be looking at the films that were collected by the young man over the years. And so I went. I said, oh, let me go check out this event. And I went and I parked, and then there was a line. I was going, oh, this line, you know, this, that, and the other. And then finally I get inside, and I insisted to get inside. This is a thing about knowing who you are in the world. So I arrived, and it was, like most events, oversold, but most people don't all show up. Well, everyone showed up. Clearly, everybody wanted to be part of this wonderful event. And we were in the line, and I just said, what's happening? What are we doing? Well, in the film, and I said, oh, that's great, but we're outside. How do we navigate moving forward? And I'm glad I said something, because the gentleman said, sir, you come with me, this, that, and the other, and brought me inside. And I was one of the first people to sit down in this little private area, which is basically their reception, where they were doing a second outside screening of the film, which I'm glad I sat there. It felt very communal. It was really awesome to experience whatever the film was that day. I think it was Shaft or something. And then they had a talk. And right before the talk, you came out, and the programmer introduced you. And I'm like, as much as I've known and been in love with this artist and the things that he's done, I never knew anything about his family. That's why I'm so glad you're here today, because it's important. The thing that stood out to me was your expression and the constant asking of questions that people curious want to know about your brother. And if you don't know if you remember, but I said I put up my hand to speak, and I'm not that type of person, as I mentioned, and I didn't have a question. What I said to you was, the work that you are doing, when we lose someone, we confuse the idea, or we get tested on what we think immortality is. Really, is my mother, brother, cousin, child at the right hand of God, sitting with angels and singing and birds flying around? Like, is that what it is? Or whatever your other religious beliefs are, you get challenged in that moment. All you can think about is the person you've loved that's not there. And so I said to you in that day, what you are doing is confirming the immortality, and you should be commended for that. And I appreciate you and really love what you're doing in that space. Afterwards, I got up, I walked over, we had a quick conversation. I said, I think what you're doing is amazing. I want to know more about what you're doing. Wondering if by chance, if you'd be willing to be on my podcast. And you so generously said, on one condition, if you would be on mine. And I just smiled. That carried me for the entire day and week. It was such joy to have had such a warm experience. And so now, put it all together, here we are. So that is my take. And obviously, since then, I have been completely blown away by, and we will talk about all of these things, your co-working space for young professional women, your work that you're doing with Shaping Freedom, and the fact that obviously that you are taking up the gauntlet with your sister to carry on the tradition and, should I say, the legacy of your brother through the estate. So these are all the things I'd love to talk about at your leisure in whatever position you wish to speak about them. But this is a very special moment, and I'm really glad to have you here. So that's my take on how I met you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it was, I rarely agree to do an interview or anything like that, and I let other people kind of help me with that, help me to kind of figure that out and navigate it. And in this particular moment, I felt compelled, and I listened to that voice because I trust myself and I trust God. And you asked me to do it, and I, without a hesitation, said yes, I would. I didn't even know why. So that is, I don't have anything more scientific than that to explain why I was willing to have this conversation. I just felt like I believed that you and I could have a really good conversation. And the topic of being in creative energy and how important it is to pay attention to your mental and emotional well-being while operating in that space is one that's very dear to my heart. And so the opportunity to have that conversation, to talk about that, was exciting for me, for sure.
I always do a reading, and what you just said reminded me that I should do it. And this is from my book. This is the original version of the book that I designed while living in Colombia. It's called Daily Inspiration, Your Guide to Hope in Times of Hopelessness. That's it over there. I did an Amazon version so people can get it quickly. But today's reading is very interesting, and it happens to time out perfectly with the date. Focus on the destination, and you will find every obstacle will transform into a helpful guide. Only when we lose focus, either through disappointment or even excitement, do we then feel an uneasiness in our lives. In the midst of such circumstances, we can wallow in the moment or attempt to fight through it. Neither of these tactics serve us. Stillness, however, and a simple but definitive refocusing on your greatest destination will immediately put you back on the path of least resistance. Focus is the essence of visioning your dreams so that you may see them through to fruition. So on that topic and with that motivation, we move into the second part where I ask you about your work. I would love to hear about all of the work, all the things that people don't know. While they may hear the name and they think of your brother, I want them to hear your name and think of Shaping Freedom and think of your brother and think of all of the work that you're doing across the board, because it's our family nucleus that we come up with that help to navigate who we will be in the world. And I want to hear and learn so much about you in this moment, if that's okay.
Of course. I appreciate that. And that was a beautiful read. Thank you. I think what's really important out of what you just read is this idea of focus on what you want. And I think that a lot of people, I think it's really important to remember why you're doing what you're doing and where it is that you want to go. And in order to do that, you have to have clarity about where it is that you want to go. And I think that that has been a guiding principle that has worked very, very well for me in my life, and has also worked very well for my brother, for example, and for other members of my family. It's really been about focus and being clear about where you want to go, because once you know where you're going, then it's just a matter of the figuring out of how. And so I appreciate you asking me about what I'm up to, because I'm really excited about all the things that I'm doing. I love my life. I really do. And I love my life having really gotten to a point where I understand how resistance is simply feedback for you to understand where your energy is best suited and maybe where you shouldn't be putting too much effort and energy. So going back to, the things that I'm up to, my parents separated when I was very young. And they were married, and upon their decision to end that portion of their chapter together, the decision was made. It's a long, lengthy story that I won't get into, but we lived with our dad, and they co-parented, but we lived primarily with our dad. And my mother made that decision back in the very late 60s, early 70s. She made that decision because she was not able to create the world and life that we lived in with our dad, just from a financial perspective. At that point, women would, if you were in business for yourself, it was selling Avon or, one of those kind of things, Tupperware, one of those. And she worked, but she wasn't, she wasn't like ambitious professionally in that way. And so what that meant was that my brother Jean Michel, my sister Janine, and myself, we lived with our dad. And I made a decision very early on as a young person that as a woman, I would ensure that I was always in a position to be able to take care of myself, and that I would always be in a position to take care of myself and whoever was mine, whether it was because of, sometimes it's relationship and things, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's death, or sometimes it's, some kind of disability or something that happens. And so it became very important to me very early on that I would do that. Hera Hub Carlsbad, which is the co-working space that I own down in Carlsbad, is a female-focused and very inclusive co-working space and business accelerator. And what that means is that I provide space, programs, support, and community for a primarily female community of entrepreneurs who are looking to grow, scale, or expand their business in some other way. And I do that in the name of my mother, Mathilde Basquiat, because she, at that time, was not in a position to be able to do that. And so for all of the women like Mathilde Basquiat, I'm able to provide some semblance of support and contribution to the work that they're doing for a variety of reasons, whether it's just because that's what they want to do or because of some other thing that's happening in their lives. So that's Hera Hub Carlsbad. Shaping Freedom is a personal growth company that I founded that is focused on helping people to improve the relationship that they're in with themselves. And that relationship is, in my opinion, the most important relationship that you will ever have in your life, because everything that's happening outside of you is simply a reflection of what's happening inside of you, of the relationship that you're in with yourself. And I think that's very important because there's so much focus in the world on what's happening outside of us, what other people think, how other people perceive you, what we can do to get other people to like us or not leave us or treat us well. And those things are all very important and part of the human experience. And when you start to turn that around and focus more on you and treating yourself the way that we spend our lifetime trying to get other people to treat us, it helps you to get to a place where you can truly manifest and create the things that you want to create in this lifetime, whether they're relationships or professional endeavors or personal projects or whatever they are. And so that's what Shaping Freedom is. And it's based on neurolinguistic programming and theta and coaching and a bunch of different things that I've studied around human behavior over the years. And my ultimate goal is really to help and contribute to the way that legacy is treated and respected. Because very often, especially in as individualistic a country as we live in, the focus is on me, what's happening for me. And that's very important. And I think that family legacy, when you can do things within yourself that help to positively contribute to what's happening within your family, whether you have children or not, that's where the juicy stuff is. Because it's through the legacy within our families that we bring forward both the beautiful, wonderful things that identify who we are on this planet, but it's also sometimes the ways that we bring forward things that present themselves to be cleansed or released or let go or left, where they are in the family. My sister Janine and I manage our brother's estate, Jean Michel Basquiat, who is the most incredible artist of all time for many reasons, both because of the visual art aspect, but also because of how loud and profound his voice is within culture, and how much permission his work has given to other creatives in all different disciplines and human beings. You know, how much he has supported and helped people to understand that if you put your mind to it, if you say what it is that you want to do, he said he was going to be a famous artist, right? My father, when he came to this country from Haiti, said that he was going to be a successful businessman. You know, my dreams and goals are to make sure that I, in partnership with my sister and family, hold Jean Michel to the highest esteem, have his back, honor him, honor his legacy. My goals are to be an amazing mother and to clean and clear whatever it is within me that stands in the way of my children and grandchildren and family having an amazing experience for themselves and having the ability and space to show up as who they are and to do what they want to do with their lives. My goal as a businesswoman is to create amazing experiences that are of service to the collective human beings, that I may share love and be of service. My goal as a woman is to take care of myself, to love myself, to be a role model for how I want to be treated, to set boundaries and all of that. I think that being clear, going back to your passage that you read, and I'm going to pick up that book because that's amazing stuff in there. My goal is to help people wherever, however it is. I also manage with my sister the estate, Jean Michel's estate, and our role is really just to have our brothers back. Our dad, Gerard Basquiat, managed Jean Michel's estate up until 2013 when he passed away, and Janine and I manage it today. Thank you so much. And so ultimately, my message and my passion is to help people to understand how important it is to get clear about what you want. Focus on that. Allow that to drive you. Allow that to be your compass. Don't focus as much on what you don't want. I think people can very quickly say, you know, I don't like this. I don't like when he does that. But then you turn the question around and you say, okay, well, what do you want? And people are like, that's a big question.
Yeah.
So, so that was a lot, but that is
it's exactly what it needs
part of what I'm up to. Yeah.
Well, what we resist persists, as they say. So
absolutely,
your end point is quite on. On those three things, I have a wonderful challenge for you.
I want to hear it.
Your three, for whatever reason, singular, most outstanding, tangible outcomes or projects from each of the different disciplines where you are focused.
Professionally?
So from the coaching with Shaping Freedom and all that encompasses it. By the way, I love the story about why you made the co-working space for women. This is why I have to say this again. This is why this process, this podcast is so important. Because one says, well, I don't understand, why just for women? What's the point? I don't get it. And then you realize when you're doing purposeful work, and it's a tie-in back to just artists as well. When you're doing purposeful work, we don't always explain in great detail our why, right? Mm-hmm. We assume that the why is wrapped up in the doing. Well, look at what I'm doing. And someone says, well, why? What do you mean why? Look at what I'm doing. But this finer details, like what you just described, make it all make sense, because suddenly now it's not about the co-working space for a young lady who's starting her business and trying to decide, do I want to be there? It's about the idea that the co-working space mission and its founder has had an experience which is in alignment with your experience. Mm-hmm. Your experience of wanting to be self-sufficient and independent. So a person sitting there says, I see myself in that organization, that co-working space, that founder, And because I can see myself in that space, I can see myself in that space. And so I think it's really amazing that you share that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say that that really stood out to me, the reasoning behind that. So again, I'm glad that we're here. So sorry to interrupt. You were saying.
So one slight correction to myself is that Hera Hub, the global, was founded by a friend of mine, someone who grew into a sister friend of mine named Felina Hansen.
Okay.
And there are 3 Hera Hubs for people who are entrepreneurs who are looking, right? There are 3 in San Diego. Okay. I own the one in Carlsbad. There's one in Temecula. There's one in Irvine, Chicago, DC. Nice. And so I bought the business in 2017 for the reasons that I mentioned. And it's for young entrepreneurs, yes. But I got to tell you, I've had members who are in their late 60s who had a passion to do something, and their road and journey took them a lot of different places, and then finally they decided to come back to themselves. I've had entrepreneurs who are going through divorce and who are trying to ramp up their earnings ahead of rolling off of alimony. You know, the stories are so, complex and beautiful and wonderful. So you asked me the question of what was my single most for any one of these?
All 3 of them, one of each, if you don't mind.
Sure. So for Hera Hub Carlsbad, I think it's not a specific event or moment. It's more the moments that are created when you have a group of women who are all working on something together in a room. It's those moments where we have a monthly luncheon, for example. And actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to change that. I'll tell you one of my favorite moments. One of my favorite moments was when the pandemic, when the shutdown order came on March 13th in 2020. And I had a conversation with Tamina Madsen, who is the director of the space on my behalf. And I was in Hawaii at the time, and I was chatting with her, and she was like, "It's crazy up here." And I'm like, it'll be over in a week, whatever, whatever. Okay. That was whatever. And so she's like, "I don't know. We have to shut the doors." And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "We have to shut the doors." She's like, "Oh my God, what are we going to do?" And it was like, this fear, understandable fear. And I said to her, "No, we're not going to, this is what we're going to do. We're going to meet our members where we are. And what we're going to do is we're going to go online. We're going to take it online." And she's like, "What are you talking about? Like, we're like an in-person co-working space." And I'm like, "No, that's okay. We said we were going to meet our members where they are, and that is what we're going to continue to do." And so we, as of that Monday, or maybe a few days after, because I think it took a minute to kind of get calibrated, but we literally went online and we co-worked together online as a community. We brought all of our programming and workshops and classes and social things online. We had game night online, and it was a really beautiful, although very stressful, because of what was happening in the world, a very beautiful time of solution finding and really meeting each other where we all were, and having people where their children were crawling over their heads in the middle of, Zoom meetings and all that. But it was beautiful. So for me, it really felt good to know that we had created, that we were really living what we said we were going to do, which was to meet entrepreneurs where they are, no matter what the external circumstances were. And so I feel very good about that. For Shaping Freedom, I'm bi-coastal, but I live in San Diego, and it's not the most diverse place in the world. And I'm from Brooklyn, where, I am a queen and there are kings, and it's very diverse, and it's not just
queen, morning queen, we say.
Yes, and doors are held, and it's just a different vibe. I love it. And it's also not just diverse, from the complexion of your skin, but it's also very diverse in terms of people from all over the world, from the Caribbean, from Europe, from all over the world are coming together and living in that space. And San Diego was not the most diverse place in the world.
Yeah.
And so I have had friends who have said that they are leaving because it's not diverse. I believe that if you want something, you can create it. And so I have this event called Soulful Saturdays that I run once a quarter here in San Diego. And I have had people come down from LA. I've had people come from all over. And it's called Soulful Saturdays. And it is a Saturday event where we come together, and it's for people who want to be in diverse space.
Boom.
And so it's a very diverse space, and people come, and what I love about the moments within Soulful Saturdays is how people walk in and they're like, I didn't know that there was this much diversity in San Diego. And so it really is a rally cry for people of color and people who are not of color, who want to be in spaces of, diversity, to come out, and we hang out. And the last one we did was a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday, obviously, and we did like a block party, and it was like
wow.
Brooklyn block party. And we had like a food, a barbecue taco thing happening, and we had like, food, and it was outside, there was music, we did karaoke, it was so much fun. And that moment of just looking out and seeing people, not about work, not about like, entrepreneurial things, just having an opportunity to come and to be surrounded in community with love and fun. It was really, really beautiful. For the production company that Shanine and I formed for this exhibition, I think the moment when we first walked in the door in New York, where the exhibition that we had been working through a model, where we were like we had this model that was built, and that's really how we designed and curated the installation, was like with these little images that we kind of put on walls. And that moment walking into the exhibition in New York and standing within a model that we had been standing over and working with was a beautiful, beautiful experience. Absolutely amazing. And just kind of walking in there, David Ajay is the one who designed, the architect whose company designed the space that we were in. Eileen Gallagher is the producer. Shanine and I, the curators and the executive producers for the exhibition. And just walking in and seeing what 18 months through a portion of the pandemic, and doing a lot of the work over Zoom, we worked so hard to bring that together, and to just walk in there and then to see the ways that families responded to the exhibition was really, really beautiful. Having mothers walk up to say, my child is a creative and I don't understand them, and I've been trying to encourage them to go get a real job, but this exhibition and you and your sister sharing your family story helps me to see things differently. For me, that was absolutely beautiful. And then for my brother's estate and the work I'm doing there, I think a beautiful moment there is really just every day, and the people that we get to talk to and meet, and the people who have the opportunity to perhaps not be able to afford a Jean Michel Basquiat painting, but to be able to wear a t-shirt or some other article that helps them to draw some inspiration and to have a piece of Jean Michel. I think that's always really beautiful.
I mean, the family part, there's a tie-in, there was a moment yesterday, 'cause I didn't want to go before I went. And two things struck me. I mean, the work is a no-brainer. That's like that I understand. But the family part, to me, I walked up and there was a little framed piece, and it looked like an almost light blue envelope. It had your brother's name written on it. It was his birth certificate. And I was like, oh, we're in for a different type of show today. That moment, I said, okay, we're in for a different type of show today.
His birth announcement.
Is it birth announcement? Is that what it was?
His
was it
birth announcement.
Okay.
In a little blue,
yes,
in my mother's like beautiful handwriting.
Yes. And to this day, in this, our connections and combinations are just beyond. So I build space to show work. So I don't just create art and film and photography, but I design and activate space publicly, interior and exterior. And did a huge activation for the Pan American Games that opened on my mother's birthday. And 2 weeks to the day, my mother had passed away. But in that experience, I remember that feeling. I'm matching mine with yours in New York. When I walked in the door, my mom had inspired this work. It's all women, native to the nation, their faces painted in the color of their nation's flag. And so we did 41 7-foot backlit portraits in the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. And it so happened, as fate would have it, with the games opening on July 10th, that they decided that they would do a reception for us in the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce headquarters. And the reception, they picked a date. I remember in my head, I said, I won't tell them a date. I know what date, but I won't tell them. And in my head, I kept saying 7/7/7/7/7/7. 7/7/7/7. And my mother's birthday is July 7th. And sure enough, I got a call. And they're like, yeah, so Robert, so we've decided on the day for the reception for your opening of your Young World Faces for Pan Am. And we decided on 7/7. So I walked in the door and had your experience, and I was able to add on that it was my mother's birthday. And so I was able to ask everyone to wear, all 41 women that were showcased and featured had not seen their photo since it was taken. And they got to walk in the room and see 7-foot tall portraits of themselves. All of them I asked to wear a hint of pink as the color of unconditional love. I wore a pink blazer. I bought my mom a pink blazer, a beautiful pink hat. And we were just showing up the town. It was a fantastic night. And the one time, which I'll ask you if you have this experience and this feeling yourself, you do work and you know it's serving others. And you do work and you know it's serving you. And then you have the rare occasion where it's the win, 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 where it serves you, it serves others, and it serves gratitude. It serves a sense of purpose, this all-encompassing feeling that I can do for myself and impact others in a positive way, and everyone can win. It doesn't have to be I win at your expense or you win at my expense. In that moment, standing there, we took this huge photo with me and all the 41 women. They were there. Some had arrived, were pregnant. Some had had children in that time. Some were there with their parents. That experience, that feeling, for you, when you got past seeing it for the first time just with your sister and your tight production crew, and you were in an audience with people enjoying the space, what did it mean to you? And let me hint and try to drive what I'm getting at with the question. Okay. I think you're a healer. And I try to walk through the world as a supporter and a healer with whatever little information I have to drive people forward to their best self. In fact, I call my program The Journey Back to Self. So every time you say that, it lights me up. But I ask this question of you to embed into your answer about how you felt in that moment. I always say, but who will heal the healers? Who will be there for the people that are out there doing this purposeful work, who are actually human beings that have the same questions and doubts, and I think the phrase out there that people use a lot is imposter syndrome and this, that, and that. Who's there for them? So in my asking what it felt like, I want to add a subtext. Did you feel healed in that moment? Did you feel uplifted and supported in that moment? Did it make you feel, with all that everyone was experiencing in this joy and this healing moment, did it do that for you?
Well, yes. And the entire experience, grief and loss are very interesting phenomenons that we go through in our lives. And Jean Michel passed away 32 years ago. No,
wow,
35 years ago, excuse me. And 35 years ago this past Saturday, actually. And I know you did a post on it, I think, over the weekend. And I've received a lot of messages from people over the last couple of days. It was a very interesting weekend. But this exhibition, what it did was the healing of a loss is not something that happens within the 2 weeks following that person passing away. It is, you go through varying degrees of it. It gets deeper and deeper. And so what the exhibition did for me specifically was it helped to heal certain parts of the loss at a much deeper level. And it also helped to complete and rectify some things within my ancestral legacy, because it was a moment that was about Jean Michel, but Jean Michel stood in the doorway of all that came before him. So it was also a moment for my family, for those of my family members who are not here anymore. It was a moment of kind of completion energy for myself and also for my sister. I think I can speak for her for this. We wrote a catalog to accompany the exhibition, and in that it really was a nod and an homage to our father who came to this country, to our mother who, are you holding it? To our mother who came, who was a Brooklyn born Puerto Rican woman of color. Thank you for that, Robert. And our grandparents. So yes, it was very healing. It was very cathartic. And I'll also say, since you mentioned that, and I had forgotten to mention it, so thank you for reminding me, that the work that I've been doing with Shaping Freedom, it's interesting because it has kind of ebbed and flowed and taken on different forms. It's always about healing. It's always about connection to yourself and relationship. But what's really up for me lately is how important it is to support those folks who are in creative energy.
Yeah.
Because being in creative energy, there's the energies of creation, maintenance, or transformation, and then completion. And a lot of folks live in kind of transformation, which is like, you have kind of a set thing that you're doing in order to move something forward. The energy of creation or creator energy or creative energy is very different, because it's filled with uncertainty. It's filled with, like you mentioned, imposter syndrome, pushing really big things, big ideas, big dreams, pushing them up a hill. And that energy of being in that space is very different. And so one of the things that I've observed about even my own experience is, Hera Hub Carlsbad, creative energy. Entrepreneurs, we're in creative energy all day, every day. How are we going to make that happen? Jean Michel's estate, creative energy all day, every day. How do we manage his estate, but also how do we keep his legacy moving forward in a way that respects and honors him, and that appreciates those folks who have who are appreciative of Jean Michel. The exhibition, how do you create something that gives people insight into this incredible man and his journey?
So I'm in the Basquiat exhibit, and this is the craziest thing. Listen to the song. So, a fun fact nobody knows. When I was shooting Young World Faces in Toronto for the Pan Am Games, every shot, every time I went to capture the model that day, I played this song by Phil Collins because of the emotional drive that it caused. This is remarkable.
So everything that I'm doing is in creative energy, and therefore many of the people that I interact with personally and professionally are also in creative energy.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there is not a lot of support for us because we're the ones kind of creating things. So it's similar. I love your question and thank you for asking it. You know, who is it that's going to help the creatives, the creators, and the healers, and those folks who are doing that very deep, very important, and also very laborious work. I think it's beautiful, but it's also really important to pay attention to the fact that if you are a person who's operating in that creative energy every day, you got to swing that pendulum back.
Yeah.
You have to fill yourself up. Like, I love that you talked about your workouts and your running and whatever you're doing and however you're taking care of yourself and the things that I do to take care of myself. You can burn out.
That's a really important
if you don't.
point. That's a really important point. So how, for someone watching, and by the way, we've beautifully shifted into what I call curating life by the language of design, through the language of design. Curating life through the language of design is one of my things that I stand by in terms of what I'm doing here in the world. So do you, and we don't have to spend a lot of time here, someone that's looking at you saying, wow, anything, whether or not, obviously, not everyone and not anyone will have a brother like your brother. But the key is, obviously, managing that estate is one thing, but with Shaping Freedom, you know, with the co-working space, when you are having a tough time, maybe COVID, whatever it may be, something's come to impede your forward movement towards this purposeful work and this outcome for which you desire, that you feel will serve the world in a better way, and something is in the way. Who do you turn to? What do you turn to? A person, practices, someone watching that wants to do what you're doing. And we can speak to the practicality. I will send them your website. They can go through, they can send messages. But really, how do they manage obstacles? How do you do it? If they're looking at you and they're inspired by you, what are the tools that you use to keep yourself on track when you reach to a space where there are things in your way negatively impacting your ability to do your purposeful work?
That's a big question. What I do is I pay attention to the energy of the thing that gives the illusion of being an obstacle. So sometimes...
Say that again.
I don't know if I can.
You
I pay
attention to the thing.
energy of what I perceive
appearing
as the
an
illusion of obstacle.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes.
We're going to ring that one back and put it on the screen. That was a good one. That's going on a T-shirt or something. That is fantastic.
That'll remind me so I can write it down. I pay attention to that because I think sometimes what we see as obstacles are lessons or things that we need to be paying attention to, or it's indicative of where we should not or don't need to be putting our energy. So I really pay attention to I pay attention to my energy, to what I'm feeling. And when I feel resistance, I explore it.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here right now? And what I do even before then is, and it's very simple, right? I get really good sleep. I put a lot of energy and focus on making sure that I get good sleep because I am a creative person and my mind can be going. All right. Yeah. I have had those moments of 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, why am I thinking about this? Right. So for me, it is, I start the night before to make sure that I get good sleep doing whatever it is. Sometimes it's making sure that I take a bath. Sometimes it's like whatever it is that I need to do to make sure I get quality sleep. I make sure I drink a lot of water and coconut water and hydrate. And, and I also am very focused on the end game because a lot of times there are things that present themselves as obstacles or challenges that actually don't need to be. So I don't show up for every fight. I don't show up for everything that presents itself. Sometimes giving some space helps more than anything that I can try to push forward in that moment. Sometimes it's just a matter of you know what? I'm going to give this some space and I'm going to focus on what's important to me right now. I travel a lot. I go from really early in the morning until the evening. I work really, really hard. There's a glamour, to having 4 businesses and running them and all of that. But I got to tell you, it is hard work. It's a lot of hard work. And for me, living a quality life is one of the most important things to me. So I only do what I can connect my heart to.
I love it.
And I ensure that I am having fun. The last thing I'll mention is I'm also very careful about curating my community. And so what I mean by that is you can't, sometimes we have these beautiful visions of things that we want to do or things that we're creating. And then we take that dream and we go and try to share it with someone that we know very well does not have the ability to support us.
Yeah.
Or to even understand the dream.
Yeah.
Right? And then we get upset with them. Right?
Yeah.
So you don't take that dream and go bring it to a person that you know is a naysayer, that you know is not going to support you. If you have a dream of being I'll use myself as an example, someone who runs these different businesses, who's doing all this, I need people around me who aren't yes people, but I need people around me who understand what the energy of being in an entrepreneurial spirit really feels like.
Yeah.
I need people who understand that to be around me, so that when I say on a Saturday, wow, I need a minute because I have to go take care of this thing, they're not going to say things to me like, well, don't you work a 9 to 5? I can't think of the thing, but it's
Yeah.
Saturday. Why are you working? I need people who understand what this world is like, so that I am surrounded by support. So I think the single most important thing is figuring out what it is that you want, and then ensuring that you have community around you that understands those different aspects. And sometimes the person that you go and have coffee or a drink with and vent about your dating relationships is not the same person that you bring your entrepreneurial projects to. So just really being clear about who's in your life and why.
Well, I would say, if you would allow me to add to that, I think there's also a sense of your why you're asking that person. What is it about that person that you feel you need them to give you the final thumbs up, you're doing okay?
That's right.
And when you try to assess that, I think there's a healing that comes from realizing that why are you looking for their opinion? And is it their approval? Is there something you're trying to use this final thumbs up to wash away an old pain, an old hurt, a sense that you don't really think they believe in you, but you really want them to? And that might open you up to an entirely different conversation about relationship and what you're having and the relationship you have with that person and why you feel they're the one you need to share with. So on that, I do know that we have a tight time, but I absolutely in advance want to invite you for a part 2. There's so much more that I want to speak to you about, specifically as healing. I'm glad that we're able to talk.
Well, you're going to be on my podcast.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about it.
You get to go through the process. So
yes.
I did have a final question for you, but before we go, I want to tell you a final story. And first, to do that, I must reveal my footing, my style on the feet today.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so I have on no shoes. I'm wearing socks. Now, what is my point of this joke? When I was in Toronto, I think I told you this in person, but I'll make it quick. When I was in Toronto, I'd arrived to do the Pan Am Games activation. And at the time, while leading up to it, I'd done a few things, some activations at the Royal Ontario Museum and things of that nature. And I think it was at the AGO, they were showing a show of your brother. And they took that photo, which I saw at the activation here in LA, of the magazine cover of him sitting in the chair with no socks on in a suit. And you bringing that forward again, because I always wear shoes with my suit. I wear this suit out of respect for my guests. I want them to know I take them seriously and I appreciate their time. And so I was like, I'm not wearing no shoes. And I wanted to tell you the subconscious impact of his self-portraits made such an impact in my life. And it really is not, I should explain, it's not like I sat studying all of your brother's work. That wasn't the case. But with the little bit of pieces that I received, there was such a clear message. It's such a conscious and unconscious message about doing purposeful work and its impact. I want to say to you again, to you and your sister again, in front of the world, how grateful we are that you're continuing to drive through messages that clarify to us, all people, because as we know, racism is an antiquated concept. It's not based on any real scenario in a modern age. It is useless. Nobody is going back to being enslaved. So the psychology behind trying to enforce this is ridiculous. So it's time to let it go. But that being said, the work that you're doing expands legacy, expands immortality, but it expands it in a purposeful manner that is part of the process and the necessary interaction in the world that brings peace, happiness, joy, drive. Because without purpose, this is what is revealed, purpose. Without it, we cannot move forward. It does not allow us to wake up in the morning. It's hard to get out of bed if you don't know what you're getting out of bed for. So I repeat now and once again and forevermore the gratitude that I have for the work that you're doing in that space. Shaping Freedom is absolutely remarkable. I hope that when you have one of your coaching events, I'll have the opportunity to take part. I love sabbaticals. I love coaching, retreats, things of that nature. I'm there. Block party, put me on the mailing list.
I will make sure. Yes, sir.
I'm all in on the block party. And don't as much as I appreciate the support, I'll definitely make sure you get a copy of Daily Inspiration, the book. But before we wrap up, I wanted to say, is there anything that you would like to share to the audience? One last hurrah before we check out for the evening that they may take with them.
Yes. And that is trust yourself. You know, with all due respect to the people that we have in our worlds, they don't always understand what's happening from your viewpoint or your why. Don't spend too much time trying to convince people of your why in order to get them on board with your dreams. Do what you know you're meant to do. Had my brother not been willing and able to do whatever it took for him to become an artist and to live his dream, we would not have the Jean Michel Basquiat legacy that we have today. He may have been a miserable person working in corporate wearing a suit. My father left Haiti, came to this country and said, I'm going to be a successful businessman. And he did that no matter what. Yes, that was his thing. And, you know, the list goes on and on and on. So that comes with trusting yourself. Trusting yourself to make the right decisions for your life, because at the end of the day, it's you and you and you and God, right? And so trust yourself. Trust yourself is the biggest leave behind that I'd like to contribute for your audience. Just trust yourself.
I declare in this moment, you forever have my support in any which way that I can provide it. Please know that I am here. I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for tuning in to Robert Young's Bright, Fame, and Shining, the podcast. And on this final little antiquated, wonderful, beautiful note, I would like to say that while I was in this lovely show, I saw a small piece of writing that said, Lisa ran away. Snooki ran away.
That's right.
Well, I'm glad to say, ladies and gentlemen, that she's right back. She's come back. So please follow her on all of her social media. Check out the show. Please go check out King Pleasure. Please go and pick up this catalog. If you've ever wanted to own a Basquiat, I've now been finally corrected by the right person as to how to pronounce your name. If you ever want to own, this is an opportunity, an entry-level opportunity. Go and get this catalog. Mine is still in the plastic. I think I'm going to buy a second one and just put this one away as a collector. But go and buy this. This will be your entryway to learning something special. But please make sure you check out the links that you can go check out Shaping Freedom. You can check out the co-working space. You can check out everything that this incredible woman has brought to the world for you to have a better life and to get back to yourself. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you. With love and grace.
Thank you.
Ashe.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah.